Brandon Staley has run 4 NFL defenses in his young coaching career, and in all 4 of them, he's had a star, both literally and figuratively, on that defense. In the 5th version, I'm pretty sure that star is gonna be Alontae Taylor. Let's break it down. I'm Tim. Let's talk Saints. So what we're talking about here is there is a position in the secondary that, and I'm gonna use a terminology that I heard some of the media guys talking about when they were covering OTAs, which is the star position, which is a position that Brandon Staley has had in LA with the Rams the 1 year there, and then 3 years he was head coach of the Chargers and running that defense. It's a hybrid position. It's basically really a cornerback, safety, linebacker hybrid, nickel slot with linebacker responsibilities, that sort of thing. Um, it's requires ability to play man, which typically in a nickel slot you see an awful lot of that, especially combating 11 personnel. Nickel slot's got to run with the slot receiver in man coverage, but also has to be available for run support. Will blitz to help pressure the quarterback, but not only the stuff they're doing in the box, they still have to have the ability to play in some space and to possibly pop outside or go deep. Money position is like that safety linebacker. This is terminology you hear a lot in the NFL, that portion of the hybrid. So that's more of the inbox role, a little less of the man coverage. Typically, they will play some man. They may have to play in space a little more and even possibly outside and deep at times, just depending on what's going on with the offense. Because remember, we'll probably reference this a lot. But when we did the video with Cup explaining Staley's defense, a lot of these concepts about versatility and trying to manipulate the offense, really, what you're doing defensively, you need players that can do multiple things to allow that to happen. Hence these roles. So eh, the way I look at it, the best way that I can explain it at a very base level is if you're the star in Brandon Staley's defense, you're just a guy that through the course of a game is going to be constantly having to deal with a lot of shit. There's just no way around it. Heavy responsibility role, but a lot of playmaking ability that can be baked into it. Now, in his 4 years, he really only had two. And we will cover the bigger name of the two first. These are the stats of those two players. For 3 years, when he was head coach of the Chargers, he had Derwin James. Just in case you're not familiar with Derwin James, pretty much an all-pro super stud safety from the moment he showed up in the NFL as a rookie. 19 and 20, some lean years for him due to injury, but for the most part, solid football player. But he was beyond solid the 3 years that Brandon Staley had him in this role. Now, this was more of the box safety linebacker version, but make no mistake about it. He could do stuff on the outside. He could do stuff deep. He could play some man. He could play some zone. And Staley basically unleashed him to just put up massive numbers in those 3 years. Now, I am not saying Alontae Taylor is going to be Derwin James. That would be a tall, tall order. But hey, if he wants to get about 80% of the way there as far as playing ability and production, I am on board solidly. Now, the other guy that we're going to talk about is, and you're probably going to remember the name, but Troy Hill. Now, Troy Hill has been a veteran corner for 10 years in the league, but in 2020, Brandon Staley's 1 year of running that Rams defense, he got moved from the outside to the inside into that star role, and he had a career year. Like I said, he's been a solid guy throughout his career, but in that one season, about a fifth of his career solo tackles came in that one season. About a quarter or so of his assists came in that one season. A third of his pass defended in that one season. Most of his turnovers, I think he had one recovery or forced fumble that didn't happen in that season. His interceptions had two in that season, both two defensive touchdowns in that season. He was a playmaking machine from that move on the inside in the way that Brandon Staley schemed it. And what he did in that year was a lot like we were trying to do with Alontae Taylor. the last few seasons in the version of our defense with that more traditional nickel slot corner. But I see no reason, based on the fact, and we'll break down Alontae a little more in the next segment, but just based on the versatility that Alontae had in college at Tennessee, and the fact that long before we tried to move him the inside, we had him basically playing the outside. And there was always the thought the way he played the game, people, and I was one of them, looked at him and went, he might be better at safety. So you think you're at a starting point with Taylor when you look at you drafted a safety out of college at Derwin James, who everybody knew was going to be just a stud, and he is. And if he doesn't have any significant injury histories, he's probably going to be a lock for the NFL Hall of Fame. He's that good. But you look at a guy like Hill, who, look, 10 years in the league as a cornerback, you don't suck because you're not going to stick around that long. But the 1 year he truly, truly flashed, Staley moved him to the inside and handled that portion of the role. So literally and figuratively, the star is a potential to be the star of the defense. It's that thing where Staley's going, I'm going to ask you to do a lot of things, but if you can do them, and I can tailor the defense to fit your skills, which we know Staley wants to do, and be able to implement the scheme and get us into a position. And have to mention Hill when we talk about what Cooper Kupp was talking about. That move to Hill was a little at the beginning of that transition of what defenses were doing. 3 years he did it with Derwin James, which was similar, but not completely the same. And now we're going to get an even more evolved version with Alontae Taylor. So I think there's a lot of history with the two players. Taylor's ability, we know it's there coming in. On this could be a very interesting case of how good can this marriage of Staley's coaching and scheme with Alontae Taylor's ability, how good could it really, really be? I want to take a little step back and a little deeper dive into Alontae Taylor's situation because, look, I hate to bang. I mean, I'm trying not to bang on the previous staff, but sometimes when you just talk about certain players, and Alontae Taylor is one of them, you're like, or at least I feel like, what in the heck were you guys doing? Why were you coaches? And what I mean by that is Taylor showed a lot of potential. When he was drafted, the flashes we saw his rookie year, several of us, me included, were very excited going, I don't know what we have, but it feels like there's something in there that you can tap into and unleash. So he started on the outside. Then his second year, they got the bright idea. Well, he needs to play. CJ Gardner Johnson was going. We need to find another nickel corner, slot corner, whatever you want to call it. Um, and so, hey, let's put Taylor in there. And it wasn't dissimilar from what he did in college with Tennessee, where he could play some inside and outside, could play some deep stuff too when they needed him to. But it's a big step going from SEC University of Tennessee to NFL. And apparently, it seems like they just thought, no, he'll be able to do it. I don't know what the game plan was. It looked terrible. He got benched for a while. It was so bad. Caught a lot of ire of fans. Honestly, at times, I was one of them, just going, what in the F? But overall, an epiphany last year about this time. And you can probably Google some form of defensive coordinator Joe Woods talks about Alontae Taylor and see the interview that I saw, which simultaneously made me happy and pissed me off at the same time. Unlike most coaching interviews over the last couple of seasons, because he admitted that when they tried to move Alontae to the inside, they just didn't have a good plan for it. They didn't do a good job. And this is probably more so on our head coach slash defensive coordinator than on Joe Woods, who I think was, I don't want to say name only, but name mostly as a defensive coordinator. So, regardless, somebody along that chain of command should have maybe sat down and thought what Joe Woods admitted to in this interview, which is, outside corners, while we say, hey, they'll be on an island in the sense of they may be man up on somebody with no help, but it's not 100% accurate. They do have help. The 12th man, the sideline. They have a boundary. Great corners in the NFL, one of the reasons why they're great corners is they use that boundary like a 12th or even a 13th man when they're out there defending. What Joe Woods alluded to is, well, once we moved him, didn't allude, he said it outright. In fact, bad choice of words on my part. We moved him to the inside where now he doesn't have that built-in extra defender. So it truly can be an island at times in the sense of you're in the middle. You're having to defend 360 degrees around you and possibly with no help in sight. Your safety help may be way downfield and take a while to get to you. Any pursuit that you may get from the rest of the defenders, depending on what the offense is doing, may not be available. And you're playing in a lot of space, even man coverage across the middle. You're playing in space. You don't have that boundary to physically force a receiver into and help disrupt the passing game or support in the run game. If I can just string him out wide and get him to the sideline, even if I don't tackle him and get him out of bounds, or then the pursuit has time to catch up and finish it off. None of that really exists in the middle of the field. And I was ashamed because when Joe Wood started talking about that, it seemed so obvious. I was like, why didn't I figure that out on my own? But it seems pretty obvious. And they had no plan for it. And he suffered in my opinion, he suffered it in his second year in the NFL because of them. And that he's not the only veteran player or young player, excuse me, we had during that time that fell into that category. So once they got that figured out, you look at his 2024 on the inside, he was a holy terror. Now I realize he 4 sacks, 3 of them came in that first game against Carolina, but in a reoccurring theme that went on around most of our defensive line and is Taylor still had good pressure numbers when he did blitz, even though he would only have 2 half sacks the rest of the year. Still had tremendous pressure numbers. He was still disruptive. And like guys like Young and Granderson just didn't finish the deal enough times. But unlike them, he's a defensive back. He's not a defensive lineman. Slight difference there. But he showed, more importantly, the ability. I can come off that inside from that slot position, that slot corner, linebacker, whatever you want to call it, get to the quarterback or get close and be truly, truly disruptive. Then Lattimore started having hamstring issues yet again. Then Adebo went down with a broken leg against Denver in week 6. Lattimore never truly came back, and we ended up trading him at right after week 9, right before the week 10 trade deadline. Coincidentally, when you look at Taylor's numbers, all his sacks, all his tackles for losses, both of his forced fumbles happened during weeks 1 through 6. 61 solo tackles, 31 of them came weeks 1 through 6. 11 of his 28 assists, weeks 1 through 6. Seeing a pattern here on that inside. And I know if you drill down harder, the numbers may not necessarily be as clear as I'm implying, but I think they are. That when he went to the outside, 2 things. One, we had not prepared him all year to play on the outside. We were preparing him to play on the inside because we hadn't bothered to do it the year before the first time we tried. But we didn't even allow for the fact that, man, we may have start having some injuries, some guys going down. He may have to play outside more. I think it hurt him. Now I'm going to be honest with you. His pass defenses actually went up but it kind of makes sense once he went to the outside. But if you remember back during that stretch, he got picked on a lot by other offenses. And there were times where he played really, really well. I don't want to take anything away from him, but there's other times when he didn't, which is why defenses were willing to try it and see if they could get to him. But I think that's nothing on Taylor. I think that's way, 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 way more on what the previous defensive staff did to him or didn't do with him or didn't do for him, maybe is the best way to put it. So I think he got a raw deal in the whole thing compared to what how it could have looked. And at the same time, I don't hear too many people going, man, Alontae Taylor is terrible. They need to get rid of him. I think most, if not all, Saints fans are going pretty much in the same manner I am, going, that was just a misused asset, more or less the whole time he was here. Look, sum it all up this way. I think this is where we're going with this conversation. Pun intended. There's always been an opportunity. I should say an opportunity, an ability, and a chance for Alontae Taylor to be a star. And now you have a scheme and a coach coming in who, you got to wonder if that's why he doesn't call that position the star. Going, you're the guy. You're going to go make some plays for us. You're going to help us win games from this position. We're going to ask a lot from you. But I think, look, I think the Troy Hill move displays it. Staley has a pretty good idea of what he's looking for and then tailoring it to what he needs and what he has around the player. What Taylor has around him, at least in this from the secondary point of view, there's some question marks in the front seven, more or less. But he's got a young Kool-Aid McKinstry who looked good last year, and this defense is probably. It was pointed out in the comments, and my apologies to who put it in there. I didn't write down your name, but it was pointed out by one of the viewers. Going, man, college guys like Nick Saban and Kirby Smart have been doing this for a while. And McKinstry just happened to play for Saban at Alabama, so you realize this could be more of a scheme fit for him to do what he does best. Quincy Riley undoubtedly was targeted and drafted for that reason. And a lot of people thought coming in that there was, and this was not an original thought by me, but picked up on once I started reading. There was a lot of thought after the draft going, the Saints may have drafted, it may take a year or two, but they have a first round talent corner they got later that'll be a starter in the NFL at some point. Justin Reed, veteran, and he's kind of in his prime, and he is a really good safety. It's a lot of talk that what Staley does, he's a perfect scheme fit for. You have the veteran Honey Badger back there, the leader. There's a lot of good things going on around Taylor to help him out in this. And I think the biggest thing is Brandon Staley. And I'm going to throw another name out. I did a video on him, and I will put it on the end card at the end of the video for you to go look at if you haven't seen it. But Terry Joseph being brought in to help out in the defense back, basically coordinating the pass defense. I've said it before, I'll say it again, and I will probably keep saying it forever, which is basically a lot of people want to dub the Mannings the first family of New Orleans football, but I'm like, hold on a minute. The Josephs have at least half claim to that title from the defensive side. But Terry Joseph being here, and he's a guy that is and I can't remember how they're related, but I think he and Vance are brothers. But Vance Joseph's one of the top NFL coordinators over there in Denver for Sean Payton. And I believe when people say that Terry Joseph is going to be there in the next couple of seasons, not necessarily in Denver, but be running a defense for an NFL team at a high level. He's going to be back there involved in all this. I don't think there's any indication that whatever is required of Alontae Taylor in the star position, we don't have the coaches that they have the ability to coach him up. They know they have to. They're not waiting for a whole season to happen like we did with Taylor in his second year going, oh man, we forgot to explain to him the difference or whatever was going on there. The coaching staff that's on top of the game. And I think it's hugely important that they are. Taylor, by all accounts, when people talk him up, and remember, 2025 is a contract year for him. He's a free agent as of right now after the season ends. But it's been noted he's been 100% buy-in and participation in both phases 1 and phase 2 so far the offseason. Heavily involved in scheme already. In fact, echo after one of the OTA practices, Ross Jackson, when he gave his recap of the portion the media was allowed to watch, with some 7-on-7s where he said Alontae Taylor was the player of the day from what we saw, echoed by some of the other media guys that were there, and making plays all over the place. But also, every time the media saw practices, I kept seeing mentions of how much Alontae Taylor was trying to step up and being a leader and a vocal leader. And I'm going, and this is all stuff that is it's good on many, many levels, because I am convinced he can be the big time playmaker on this defense, especially from that position, especially with the coaching staff that we have in place. The secondary needs that. He needs that. We need that. Everybody involved needs that, because we need to see that this defense's scheme, it may take more than a year to get fully into it. But when you look at the secondary going, we may be able to fix that completely in 2025. Great. That's a plus. A young playmaker who's about ready to start a second contract, roll in there and prove it this season so we can extend him. Because if we can extend him, if you're buying in, like right now we have no choice to buy in what they're trying to do. You're looking at Taylor, Riley, and McKinstry. Taylor would be just getting a second contract. Riley and McKinstry still on their rookie deals. You just brought in a veteran in Reed. Conceivable this works and they all play well, and we get the extension with Taylor. You could have these four guys sitting here from 2025 through 26, 27, 28. Now we're talking about building at least one segment of the defensive backs, being locked down for the better part of 4 or 5 seasons while this is going on with good football players. And to anchor all that off, you have the Honey Badger, who's going to be a Hall of Famer, should be, on his third team, career winding down, still a leader, still a guy you need on the team, can still make some plays. Just unfortunately, after this long of an NFL career for him, he falls into yet another category. We just don't know how much longer he's going to be able to play. We don't know how much he can bring to the table at any point this year. And we have to try to keep him healthy, because last year, despite the advanced, I hate to say advanced age, he's so much younger than I am, but I mean, for football, yes. And then the nagging injuries that stacked up on him didn't cause him to miss any times, but he was not the same guy out there we were expecting to see or we had seen in previous years. But as a leader, you still need him. And I think you still need him this year. Be great if Taylor could be, and I think he could be. That's the whole point of this video. I'm just this much short of 100% convinced he can be the playmaker like a Honey Badger. He can be that vocal leader. And when you're one of the best, if not the best, at your position, and you're the team leader, you have the ability to be, as was once referred to Eric McCoy in the offensive line, the Pied Piper, where everybody just kind of follows in line, and they're working with you towards whatever the goal is. It's a perfect set of circumstances, because when you look at the three levels of the defense, okay, for years, we always had, for the longest time, it was Cam Jordan, leader of a good defensive line. Demario Davis, leader of a good linebacking core. Secondary was Honey Badger, but for the most part, we always had some type of veteran leadership that was a pretty good football player, kind of anchored all 3 points. We need new leaders to come up, developed out of the talent pool that we have now. When you look at it, we did a video about Chase Young. Chase Young starts grabbing some sacks and grabs the leadership mantle. You've got that problem solved. I still don't know where it's going to look on the linebacking core, but you look back at the defensive backfield, and I'm staring at Alontae Taylor going, man, you could be the guy. You should be the guy. I totally believe he will be the guy. One of the most exciting things for me throughout this whole offseason so far, and every time I heard the name Alontae Taylor, And I'm thinking back to, and to be honest, I knew exactly what Brandon Staley did with Derwin James during that time in San Diego. Till I started researching the video, I had totally forgotten about Troy Hill. But as soon as I read the name, I was like, oh, holy crap, that guy was a terror that one season with the Rams in that position. Taylor's my guy on this. So I'm a 99.99% all in, but let's just call it 100. I'm 100% all in on Alontae Taylor being the guy he wants to be, Staley wants him to be, and we need him to be, quite honestly. Yeah. So I don't know if that necessarily qualifies as a question of what's going on this offseason, because I think it's more of an imperative. This has to happen this offseason moving into 2025. Alontae Taylor, excuse me, he needs to become that rising star. Pun intended. It for today. If you like what you saw and it's first time here, please go ahead. You know the spiel. Um, Give me that thumbs up. Our algorithm loves thumbs up. Please subscribe. That helps me out an awful lot and to keep growing this channel. And I definitely want to thank y'all for everyone's support, especially lately. Been real good response, and I'll keep working hard to keep trying to bring it to you. Funny I should say that during one of the vacation videos, because you'll probably be watching this on a day where I'm going to be kicked up with a cold drink somewhere, just resting and relaxing. But this is the last one, so I'll be back to the normal grind coming. And I had mentioned in the previous video, probably still going to be about maybe 2 a week, but I expect probably sometime after July the 4th, things are going to start. It kind of slowed down since minicamp ended, but I expect it's going to kind of start speeding up. And I still think we could be active in the free agent market. And that's kind of expecting what might come next, leading up to the opening of camp at the end of July. So till I see you next time, I'm Tim. Peace out and who dat.